Hello, and welcome back to the Learning Differences MOOC Ed. Last week, we busted the myth of average by exploring our own learner profiles and the variability of learners in our classrooms.
This week, we're going to focus on one aspect where you may observe student learning differences: working memory.
Working memory is the system which allows us to store and utilize information over a short period of time. In education, we often assume students have a strong working memory with regard to things like assessments and multi-step activities.
On a daily basis, you may see students who struggle with working memory have a hard time completing tasks which have multiple steps and complex directions. They may struggle to recall the appropriate information or lose track of the task, so it may appear that they don't understand the content.
In this unit, we'll help you gather awareness of your own working memory and provide you with some ideas on concrete strategies to help your students who may struggle in this area.
The good news is that several of these strategies will provide you and your students with immediately visible benefits.
Before we dive into the unit, let's hear from our experts.
What I call my biggest failure, and I remember I was teaching English in Chile, and I had this student that would do just very, very, very bad, but he participated so much in classes, and he really asked me, like, "Teacher, can you stay and teach me half an hour after class?" And I stayed. I taught him extra. I gave him extra homework, but he still failed in the tests. And actually, I never got him to succeed, and that's because I thought I was using every strategy, but I really didn't understand how he best learns.
Many times when we're embarking upon a learning task, there's some information that we're needing to hold in memory while we're actively dealing with other pieces of information.
Working memory is basically the memory that you're using in order to process things, the things that are ongoing in your brain. So it could be something that you have to memorize a sequence. It could be as simple as, I would think it's fairly advanced because I'm not good at that memorization piece. The sequencing of different numbers, for instance, in order to move to on to the next thing. It's anything related to the stuff that you're keeping in your brain to actually do the work you're actually trying to accomplish.
I think the probably easiest to understand example is long division. So you're having to hold your knowledge of multiplication facts in mind and apply them as needed as you're going through the long division problem.
The student was so motivated. He had it, but I just didn't know how to support him. I really,
What did he really struggle with?
I have no idea. I didn't have the.
Was it a particular topic?
It was English, and I would say it's like memory and language. Now with the knowledge I have, but in that moment, I was like, I don't get it.
And so when we think about the kids and try and support all kids in working memory, is the types of environments we can design to support working memory, right? Or the types of tools we can encourage kids to use. And it could be something as simple as teaching kids to actually, what's important to take in notes and in the note-taking process. If you need to remember a sequence of numbers, having that sequence of numbers written down somewhere as a little cheat sheet, if you will. Or, how do you embed that into them taking notes, or how do we support that within the classroom itself? So are we relying on working memory? Because what we know is that kids that lack the working memory, that process of lacking the working memory actually hinders their process in the capacity to process beyond that, right? So they often get stuck in that process of trying to figure out the pieces they're missing from the working memory rather than being able to advance into the next area that they were trying to accomplish.
So students who had weaker active working memories actually had less counter space. So if they were in essence making a more complex recipe, they had a whole bunch of stuff that was falling off onto the floor. So what is the way to support that? And it's to provide additional counter space. So if the purpose of the task is to see if a student understands the concept of long division, then how could you support the counter space so that they didn't have to actively hold all the multiplication facts in mind? And that would be a time where they might be allowed to use a calculator, not to do the division problem, but to do the multiplication facts that they needed to use in the process of that.
in the past we would think, okay, the kid has poor working memory, but that's not really a thing, right? Like working memory works on something. So it really depends on what it is, right? So is it that the kid doesn't have the prior knowledge that you're assuming? That's usually a big one. And then we work with teachers to understand how to modify environments that don't jeopardize the goal, but get rid of irrelevant barriers. So we usually go after the demands of the environment first, rather than particularly the kid.
As you go through the resources, be mindful on how you remember and retain information. Think about how your strategies may work for your students and how they may fall short.
We hope to hear your thoughts in the discussion forum, and we encourage you to check out the resources appropriate to the age of students you work with.
Enjoy!